Hello and welcome to Cryptid by State, Georgia. After a long-fought battle that went back and forth, we finally saw Georgia emerge victorious to be the next state in this series. Today is a video that deserves a little bit of celebration as we finally hit the halfway point, with this being the 25th entry. As such, I implore you to watch to the end as I have a fairly interesting announcement in relation to this, although I am certain longtime viewers probably know what that means. So without getting too long-winded with this intro, join us as we continue our Cryptid family road trip, where we are traveling from our previous location of North Carolina and venturing to Georgia. The Peach State, which is another name for Georgia, has been home to people dating back as far as 13,250 years ago. Over time, various cultures rose up, and by the time of European exploration started, the area mainly consisted of the Cherokee, Yamasee, Hichiti, Timucua, and various other tribes related to the Muskegon. Between 1539 and 1542, famed explorer Hernando de Soto ventured into the area and did travel much of present-day Georgia, but his goal was primarily set on finding gold and uncovering a shorter path to China. Eventually, other Spanish explorers would leave Florida to venture into the area of Georgia. Along with this, English fur traders would also establish a fort at Altmalgi, which is situated in present-day Macon. England and Spain would soon begin fighting each other over control of the area, and after a few wars, England would be victorious. In the 1730s, a member of Parliament named James Oglethorpe suggested that Georgia should be used as an area for the, in his words, worthy poor to colonize. In that, rather than filling up the already packed debtors' prisons in England, they should send them to work and live in Georgia. With his plan, people would be given land that wouldn't be larger than 50 acres to farm and live on. However, with this setup, no one could gain more land than this, even if they wanted to sell it or pass it on as inheritance. This plan took effect on February 12, 1733, when settlers arrived and established a settlement in what is known as Savannah, and the area became known as Georgia after King George II. Georgia officially became a royal colony in 1752, but things didn't go as the original plan had wanted, since many wealthy planters from South Carolina soon moved into the area and eventually took over the colony. As you may have guessed, Georgia is one of the original 13 colonies. During the American Revolution, Georgia was one of the first areas to express their want of independence from England, even though they knew if the impending war was to begin, that their coastal regions would be open for attack. This did happen, and Savannah was captured by the British. This would remain an English stronghold until the end of the war. On January 2, 1788, Georgia would officially become the fourth state to join the Union. Georgia has had many variations of its flag, including the one you are seeing, which was recently adopted on May 8, 2003. The colors are meant to represent those of the United States flag. In the blue section is the state's coat of arms, surrounded by 13 stars, which represents the 13 original colonies. The gold coat of arms has many symbols. On top is the words Constitution, which stands for the state's constitution. This is supported by 3 pillars, which is meant to represent the 3 branches of government. Within this are words representing the state's motto, which is wisdom, justice, and moderation. A lone figure dressed in colonial garb is shown with sword drawn, which represents the state defending its constitution. The famous words, "In God We Trust," are written below all of this, and its placement is meant to symbolize it as the foundation of the state. Before moving on, I did want to note something interesting. There are 13 states which provide a state dog breed, and for Georgia, they have made it that the official breed is any adoptable dog. I wanted to include this since I thought it was nice. So let's move on to the not adoptable creatures, and that would be cryptids. To be honest with you all, Georgia doesn't have a huge list of cryptids, but the ones it does have are fairly interesting. Let's start this off with a being that really doesn't fit into any type of classification. There is said to be a beastly creature that makes its home around Snodgrass Hill, and has done so for many years. It is simply known as Old Green Eyes, and by all descriptions it is said to be akin to the beings known as ghouls. It is rather tall, has long hair, glowing green eyes, a large deformed jaw, and it has many sharp fangs. Even though it is said to have existed way before the first European settlers, the first sightings of it didn't start making its rounds until after the Civil War. After the bloody Battle of Chickamauga, which was said to have the second highest in casualties outside of Gettysburg, reports of this being started to emerge. Much like other descriptions of ghouls, it was seen walking around the bodies of dead soldiers in the fields. In many cases, it was making a meal out of the fresh corpses. It is actually thought that the bloodshed and availability of easy prey is what brought the creature out of hiding. Sightings of this being weren't uncommon, and even 2 separate accidents in the 1970s were blamed on this creature. The reason behind this is that both drivers crashed their cars when they spotted something very large standing on the road and stated its eyes were glowing an eerie green color. As a note, I have seen 2 variations of the following encounter, so as the saying goes, take it with a grain of salt. In 1976, a park ranger and historian from the Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park named Edward Tinney was walking around the park at 4 a.m. when he suddenly felt a chill rush over his body. At the very same moment, he saw a tall creature step out of the darkness and it had green eyes. According to him, he stated that the being simply walked past him and it had long black hair like a woman, long pointed fangs, and its eyes were unforgettable since they glared a greenish-orange color. The being vanished from sight when a vehicle approached the ranger. As noted, I have seen other reports that were similar from this man, but in those he claimed it might have been a ghost, and appeared very human-like. So, take it for what it is. A woman named Denise Smith from Fort Oglethorpe claimed that in 1980 she had just finished her night shift at the Crystal restaurant and decided to take a shortcut through the park on her way home. That night it was really foggy out, so she decided to drive slow and steady. As she neared Wilder Tower, the headlights illuminated a large creature standing on the road and it had enormous green eyes. Due to the fog, she didn't get a good look at the creature's body, but as her car neared, it simply vanished. From what I have gathered, if these stories are true, this being isn't violent and would be considered more of a scavenger, although it will feast on a human body if given a chance. Our next creature is one that I never thought I'd be talking about involving this location. States out west, maybe, but not Georgia. There is only one recorded sighting, but it is known as the Georgia Raptor. On July 25, 2008, an 18-year-old man and his grandfather decided to spend time together by taking a nature walk at 3 p.m. They walked for a while, intent on visiting a rocky area that was previously known to have quite a few deer present. Once there, the pair stayed motionless, hoping to see something, all the while listening to the sounds of nature. Not long after this, they heard an odd, indescribable sound emanating from the forest, followed by heavy footsteps. As they watched, they saw a really strange creature emerge from the tree line about 150 yards from them. They described it as something that looked like a raptor from the Jurassic Park movies. It was about 5 feet tall at its shoulders, had a long stiff tail, walked on its 2 muscular hind legs, it had 2 short arms, and both limbs had prominent sharp claws. To tie with the movie, it also had the sickle-shaped claw on its feet. Both men stayed absolutely still, since they assumed it could run fast due to the musculature of its legs, and it appeared capable of harming them. As they watched, it lifted its head and sniffed the air for a while, then made another sound and ran off into the bushes. The men stayed put, wanting to give the creature more time to move on. Eventually they decided to return to their truck and head home. From that moment on, the man now states that he is convinced that there are creatures out there that science has yet to identify. Now, with this encounter story, I have seen a lot of skeptics have issues with the raptor from Jurassic Park portion of the story. I have seen this issue as well when talking about pterodon versions of cryptids. While this would be easy to discredit, I do have to say that none of the eyewitnesses claim that the creature they saw was a pterodon or raptor. They simply say it looks like one, and normally that is the easiest description to make. If I say I saw something that looks like a raptor from Jurassic Park without describing anything else of the event, you automatically know what the creature looked like. I am not saying I know the previous encounter was real, I'm just saying I won't rule it out simply due to the raptor statement. The next cryptid on our travels would be found in the Winder area. It appears to be a mix between local legend and real sightings. The creature is called a wog, and it was said to be seen hanging around a boggy pond that was given the name Nodorok. This being was said to have long jet black hair, was the size of a small horse, it had a head like a bear, and the body of a wolf. Its front legs were 12 inches longer than the back ones, it had red eyes, a long pink tongue that ended in a fork, and its large tail had long white bristles at the end. It was said to constantly wag the tail in a side-to-side motion, and from time to time it would slam it on the ground, making a distinct whizzing sound that could be heard for quite a distance. Many claim that this beast actually protected the Nodorok and would sweep anyone who neared it into the water with its powerful tail. Most legends claim that it was said to not be dangerous as long as a person didn't mess with it. Even with this said, there are many reports of it frequently visiting the nearby villages and causing trouble. In some stories, just the mere sight of it could kill animals from fear alone. In one sighting I found, a family known as the Drapers saw the creature emerge from the forest one night. They originally thought it was simply a wolf until they saw the distinct white tail and heard the whizzing sound. At first, the father of the family wanted to shoot the creature, and in his words he said he would send a leaden messenger clean through any part of its body or plug one of its fiery eyes. However, he thought better of this when he remembered that legend stated that the creature was unaffected by bullets. The family retreated to their cabin and barred the door. They heard the wog start walking around their home, all the while making the same sound with its tail. At one point it found a crack in one of the logs and stuck its pointed tongue through the opening. The family stayed still, and eventually the being moved on. What is interesting is that as funny as the tongue thing sounds, there are a lot of reports of it doing this same behavior at a lot of cabins of the time. Our last cryptid sounds very much like one of my favorites. In April of 2020, a woman from East Georgia, simply known as Julia, claimed that while she was stuck at home from work during the recent lockdown, her son would constantly have issues at bedtime, claiming that he was scared due to hearing something scratching at his window. This went on for many nights, and every time he would cry out for her, she would check his room, but nothing was ever there. Then on one night, he claimed that there was a strange man looking at him through the window, but again, she found nothing. To be on the safe side, she decided to stay in his room until he fell asleep, which took until 2 o'clock in the morning. Julia left the room and decided to lay in her bed when she noticed that the motion light outside was on. She watched it for a while, but said she didn't see anything odd. Finally, she laid down, and this is when she realized that the moment the light went out, something kept triggering it to come back on. Julia now was convinced someone was messing with her, so she watched the light again. Only this time, to her horror, she saw a black figure that was about 4 to 5 feet tall standing in the darkness. The creature seemed to notice her, and it stepped out into the light. This is when she noticed it had 2 leathery wings on its back, it was bipedal, it had rubbery skin, and the only feature on its face she could make out was that it had human-like eyes that glowed. Suddenly the creature moved forward and jumped onto the roof. At this moment, she heard it scratching as if it was trying to get in. Terrified, she grabbed her son and locked themselves into the bathroom, which didn't have any windows. As they cowered in fear, they heard it furiously scratching at the roof, the walls, and even a few times it sounded like it was slamming against the window. They stayed in the bathroom until morning, and by that time everything had returned to being quiet. Nervously, she grabbed her phone and looked outside to see if the creature was gone. There was nothing in the yard, but when she looked up, she saw the same creature perched on the top of a nearby pine tree. It let out a high-pitched screeching sound that she likened to a train whistle, and it flew away quickly. Julia managed to take a picture of it at this point. I should be providing that picture about now. Personally, I like the story, and it is very similar to others we have heard, but the picture seems strange. However, I will ultimately let you be the judge. As usual, I couldn't talk about every cryptid in this state, or there wasn't enough story to tell, so we have our honorable mentions section. Would you be shocked to hear that there are many Bigfoot sightings in this area? I say this jokingly, since I have yet to find a single state that doesn't have stories about a Bigfoot type of being. Even though they may sound similar, Georgia does have some interesting stories about actual giants. I did also keep seeing references to mermaids, but I couldn't find any detailed encounters. Of course, one of Georgia's most famous cryptids is the Altamaha, which is a version of Nessie. As you know, I like to talk about lesser known ones though. There were reports of a werewolf-like creature being seen around Stone Mountain. There have been quite a few panther sightings in this state as well. There was an interesting story about a dogman, but in the retelling it was simply called a skinwalker. The problem was that the source was questionable, so I will simply include it as I mentioned here. I'd like to end this section with a funny and more than likely made up cryptid that people tell others just to get a rise out of them. I normally wouldn't include ones like this, but it is new to me, and I got a good laugh out of it. This would be the supposed beaver shark. It is said to live in Pine Mountain and is 3 to 4 feet long. It looks exactly as the name sounds. There are two versions. One is it has a head of a shark and the body of a beaver, or vice versa. All claim that it will attack humans, and the shark-headed one is more vicious. In ending this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and that I made those from Georgia proud. As with most states, there are a lot of UFO and ghost sightings as well, so I look forward to revisiting it when those series start. Now for the big announcement that you probably already figured out. In honor of us hitting our halfway point, I am making a video for next week that will serve as a review for all the other states we have visited thus far. This will serve as a refresher for some, while for others it will let them know what they may have missed out on. I know a lot of my viewers love the historical and flag parts, but this will be omitted for that, although I may still show the flags. More importantly, the video will serve as a proper way to inform you on what states are still waiting to be covered. I hope you all join me for this, and I know I've been looking forward to it for quite some time. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.